Howdy, Redlegs fans, and welcome to another exciting episode of Redlegs TV for 2012. This afternoon we have two very important guests that Nathan Bassett has kindly given us to have access to. We have Shane Woolley and David Bean. Shane is the league senior runner, and David Bean is, we've come up with a new term, but just right now, haven't we, Beanie? What was it, the bench coach, which I think is a good term, don't you think, Shane? Now, these guys have a very important role. As we know, what's come into play in modern football these days is rotations, and it's something that Nord are extremely specialised in and certainly shown the way in SANFL football over the past few seasons under Nathan Bassett. And Shane, being the senior runner, obviously you have a match day role that is very important. How does your week begin with the rotations and what follows on from there?
Well, generally during the end of the week, normally on a Thursday or maybe a Friday, depending on selection, Bass will send through his full rotation listing, which is generally a full A4 page. From there, what I then do is simplify it down. Bass's game plan this year has been tremendous in the sense that he's restructured it from what a traditional game plan would be. It's created a few more rotations, but it is fairly well structured, and that makes my job a lot easier, but particularly with having David next to me, he's got it well and truly stitched with the board, and then it's a matter of me delivering Nathan's message.
Right, and then David, obviously you're on the bench full time throughout the match. Obviously you get given the same information that Shane's given at the start of the week as well, so you have to be abreast of what that spreadsheet says. And tell me about your role on the bench and coordinating that with Shane.
Well, pretty much so. I wear the headset on game day and talk to Nathan, so that's an open line, so Nathan can hear every word that I say and vice versa. My role essentially is to make sure that those rotations happen on schedule as per Nathan's requirements. So my job is to make sure that Shane's getting the rotations in the right order. He goes out and does the moves, and also that the players who are going onto the field know exactly where they're going, for how long, and that they're completely organised. Nathan's a particularly organised coach, so the information that he gives me, I've got the rotation sheet, I've got the board with the magnets on it, and should be really, in theory, quite simple.
Now, that is the burning question I'm about to get to. In theory, it should be quite simple, but it is a funny shaped ball that we have out there, and there are 36 players that go head-to-head. Some of the things that could go wrong is obviously a player, as part of those rotations, goes down early or is injured. How does that go between you two in terms of communication? Obviously, David, you have to assess who replaces that player, and Shane, you've obviously got to coordinate, obviously out in the ground, to rotate the players into new positions. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Generally chaotic when that happens. Beanie and I are looking at each other thinking, well, how are we going to address this? But in all seriousness, what generally happens with that is David and Nathan will sort out together with his coaches back up in the box how they're going to restructure. A lot of the times now, I've been doing this job for 9 years now, I've got a fairly good idea of what's going to happen. So generally the main thing is to make sure that we've got enough defensive cover, particularly their forwards being covered. And I've got a fair idea now as to who would likely be covering that area. And hopefully by the time I get back, David and Nathan and his coaching staff have got it sorted.
So it seems to me like you have got an excellent system, and like that with the experience that you both have, you've both been in the club quite a while now. Do you find that if something does go wrong that you have the ability to maybe assess what needs to be changed without bothering Nathan too much, or does he still certainly want to have a say in what goes on?
Well, again, having an open mic means that we're having an instant conversation. So if someone's sent off for a blood rule, which would be totally unexpected, and you've got to make a decision instantly, Nathan and I have an instant conversation, and we can make a move. But generally, again, as Shane said, the fact that the two of us have worked with Nathan now for a couple of years, we understand where he likes players to play and where he thinks he can get coverage from. So if a defender goes down, we've generally got a good idea of who he's going to grab to go into defence, or if a on-baller goes down, who he's going to bring into that on-ball rotation. So most of the time we can fairly well gauge what he's going to do.
Don't tell Nathan, but we probably have made the odd decision between ourselves.
Oh, that's a given. That's a given. Mind you, if I was still playing, you're having trouble getting me off, I can tell you.
Especially when we kick a goal.
Yeah. Now, obviously, with Nord being 15-1, the team are actually doing something well, and this structure, which is a very important part of the program, is doing well without pumping up your own tyres. Would you see that what you see on compared to opposition, you think you're ahead of the game in terms of how well structured the rotations are?
Oh, absolutely, and that's, I think, been one of the Central's key things. They've been a well-structured team, and this is one of the strongest structures that I see. Players still get it wrong from time to time, but Nathan is really strict on that. And what I do is I make an effort to come to most trainings now when work will allow me, because it's important. I need to know that as well, so that if we're not setting up, I actually instigate that the structure is being set up. So for me, I need to probably know the structures, the terminology as much as the coaches do, and that has taken a bit of getting used to this year because it's been a bit new, but it is a very key part of why we are where we are.
And the level of abuse that comes from Nathan Beanie, obviously just to water off a duck's back these days, or do you do such a good job that he never gets angry?
Well, it needs to be quite honest, because we've got such a structured job that I find personally that the best way for me to do my job well is to divorce myself emotionally from the game. So I don't worry about what the numbers are on the scoreboard, who's kicking our goals, who's playing well for us, umpires, what's happening in the box. I need to simply concentrate on what I'm doing. Players are emotional, as you'd expect. Coaches are emotional, as you'd expect. Our job is to get our job done.
And I think that's excellent to hear that. Keeping a cool head is a very important part of the bench process. And I think as obviously as the league runner, you come up against a lot of emotions and lots of feelings. Now we're heading into obviously a final series that we know we're going to be in. What do you see as some of the challenges that you face playing at a different oval? Does that create difficulties that you need to address in terms of the rotations and setups, and what's involved there? Do you think coming to the pressure cooker final series?
Look, there's no doubt on a bigger ground, the rotation and our job is harder. Obviously, on a bigger ground, it takes longer to get people on and off the ground, and obviously it takes me longer to get out and get back. And we rotate quite often. In fact, very often.
We're working on some 100 rotations a game. Just having a look at sort of over the last couple of days, what we've been doing this year is virtually 25 a quarter, so almost 1 a minute. Sorry, 1 a minute, absolutely.
Well, that's amazing, isn't it? That's just an enormous amount of activity going on, and add some injuries into that as well. It must be an amazing and exciting job, I suppose, at the same time.
Well, for me in particular, because that's where it's been very handy to have someone like David who's well organised and well structured, because for that to happen, I need to be doing 2 or 3 at once. And one of the things that I was really pleased that Nathan did early on in the year was he actually, I sat down to him at the start of this year and last year and said to him, we need to try and keep the structure as much as possible the same. Because once we've got those in, we can slot people in and out of the structure, so that doesn't matter. But it's when we're changing the structure each week, it makes it hard. And to Bass's credit, he's done that, which has made our job a lot easier. And therefore, we know that we can. Generally, what I'll do is I normally check with David, before the next one, and I'll know that when I'm doing it, I'll do 2, 3, maybe even 4 changes at once, and that helps that process flow pretty smoothly.
And obviously coming to the grand final possibilities, do you think that at that stage, where there's those moments where anything can go wrong, will that be a stipulation, do you think, when you sit down as a group and look at the rotations? Do you think you have to be prepared that anything can happen in final series, and it almost goes to sometimes an uncontrollable level of what can happen and what can't happen? Do you think there'll be some sort of meetings where you sit down and say, right, this is we know our rotations backwards, but what's our backup plan or plan B for if things go wrong?
Nathan's got sort of plan B, plan C, which we invoke when we need to. In terms of rotations, whilst the patterns are fairly consistent week to week, it does depend on personnel. If we have a couple of AFL players come in, Nathan might rotate in a different way week to week. But so it's really going to come down to, once Nathan knows in the first final what his 21's going to be, he'll then base his rotations and his setups and what he wants to do around that particular group of people that he's picked to play on a big deck in September.
And I think just on that, the structure I just talked about really helps with that, because we can, it is the same but different, if that makes sense.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. None at all to me. No, it's a fascinating discussion, and we do have the rotation sheet underneath your chair here. We were considering put it on screen, but we won't. We'll just put it on eBay and see what we get for it. Hey?
Yeah, absolutely.
I reckon there'll be AFL clubs that want it all around Australia. Want to have a look at what.
After the grand final when we've won it.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks very much for your time today. It's great to hear what's happening on that bench, and fascinating for the supporters, no doubt, to hear that it's not just 21 players going out there, and there is a very complicated and well organised system. It's fascinating to watch, and having spoken to you today, I'll be even more interested in watching players coming and going and where they're heading, and it's something that being out of the game for a little while that I've really had to learn and look at, but really fascinated how it happens, and from all of us and all the supporters, we wish you all the best for the final series.
Thank you, and it's definitely a lot harder than it looks, I can assure you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys.